Guys, and welcome back to our English lessons. We've been looking at the story Killicorn and we're now on lesson 6. This lesson we're going to be planning our story. Now before we do that, we're going to listen to the story Killicorn again. Very important this time because you need to be thinking, what are you going to change? Are you going to change how are you going to change your setting, your characters and your creature and how they escape? So listen to the story and then we'll come back and we'll look at that together. Killicorn. Come on, Fred, called Megan, excitement sparking in her sapphire eyes. As the siblings trudged through the gloomy forest, Fred's heart sank. His younger sister had begged him to bring her to the woodland after reading a legend about a unicorn spotted there. Finally, several irritating days of whining and pleading later, he yielded. Now, as night threw its shadowy cloak upon the world, Fred questioned the wisdom of his decision. "Hurry up, Fred," she called. "I'm coming," he shouted back in a frustrated voice. Soon after, they stepped into a glade. From above, the moon bathed everything in a ghostly silver light. Small creatures rustled in the undergrowth, and nearby a solitary owl hooted eerily. Like furry spitfires, bats swooped and swerved as they hunted nocturnal insects, squeaking in delight. The unpleasant odour of decaying leaves hung on the air. "The book said the unicorn appeared right about here," announced Megan in a hushed tone. "Yeah, and Snow White was riding on its back," Fred sighed, rolling his eyes. "What did you say?" asked Megan, as she examined the grass for hoofprints. "Nothing," grumbled Fred. Suddenly, some nearby shrubs began to shake. Then the unmistakable sound of a horse's neighing echoed amid the night. In response, Megan's features became more animated as she scanned the darkness in anticipation. "A unicorn! The legend is true," she shouted, eyes brimming with hope. Just then, a creature emerged from the greenery and stopped behind the excited girl. Fred's eyes widened in horror. His sister was correct. It was a unicorn, yet this terrifying beast was unlike anything he'd ever seen. With a coat the colour of midnight, it was a powerful stallion. Its malevolent red eyes burned like the fires of hell. However, it was the twisted horn which sent a shiver down the boy's spine. It was razor sharp and dripping with fresh blood. Noticing the colour drain from her brother's face, Megan was baffled. Slowly, she turned around and saw the unicorn. A cold knot formed in the pit of her stomach as she let out an ear-piercing scream. "Run, Megan, this way, quick," Fred bellowed. Without hesitating, Fred grabbed Megan's arm and dragged her away. Hearts pounding, they shot off into the trees. Behind them, the horrific animal let out a blood-curdling neigh and lowered its horn. Then it bolted after them. Running like the wind, the petrified pair fled through the forest. Meanwhile, the thundering of hooves grew steadily closer. With a sinking feeling, Fred realized it would catch them, and soon. Just then, they arrived at a fast-flowing river. Mustering every ounce of strength, Fred picked up his sister and launched her across the water to the other side. Although she was wet and muddy, she hauled herself up the river bank to safety. "Leave me, go," he screamed at the top of his lungs. Suddenly, the monster appeared. Snorting loudly, its blazing eyes fixed on Fred, he gulped hard. "Come on then, what are you waiting for? Come and get me," he yelled, waving his arms in the air. Lowering its dagger-like horn, the unicorn gave a mighty neigh and charged. However, just before he was skewered like kebab meat, Fred grabbed an overhanging branch and heaved himself upwards. Unable to stop in time, the brute crashed into the river, screeching in anguish. It was washed away by the powerful current. "I think you should ditch unicorns, Meg. How about mermaids instead?" asked Fred, utterly exhausted. Eyes wide, Megan regarded her brother in awe. Welcome back, and now it's time to plan. In Killicorn, Fred and Megan meet a traditionally good creature, So unicorns, when people think of unicorns, they don't think of scary creatures that want to kill people. They're usually sweet and good. In fact, I don't think I've ever read a story where the unicorn has been dangerous or bad. So it's a traditionally good creature which turns out to be bad. What kind of creature will you include in your story, and where will your story take place? Now, to help you, I've included some traditionally good creatures which usually are nice: mermaids, leprechauns, elves, I beg your pardon, fairies, gnomes. Now, of course, if you don't want to do about one of those traditionally good creatures and you just want to have a bad creature like a dragon or a troll, you can go for it. But if you may have decided that you're going to copy Killicorn quite closely and have a traditionally good creature which turns out to be bad. So, obviously, you're not going to use post-it notes. You can write number 1 in your book and then have the bullet points. Now, if you can think of a title, you can write that down now. But remember, you don't always have to have the title when you start. Many authors come up with their title at the end. Now, you do need the children's names, and I recommend a boy and a girl. And I recommend this because you will not become confused if it's he or she said. If you have 2 boys, 2 girls, it can become confusing when you use the pronouns he and she. But if it's a boy and a girl and it says he said or she said, you know who's who. That's just some advice that's worked for a lot of children I've taught. You also need to think, where does this take place? Megan asked her brother to take her to the forest because she'd read a story about a unicorn that was spotted there. If your character has read a story about mermaids, for example, they're going to go down to the beach. I would advise that it takes place either in the evening or maybe really early in the morning when there's no people around. The night is always better for adventure stories because you can create that spooky atmosphere. Now, which creature are they searching for? So this is where you need to write unicorn. Well, I can't do a unicorn. Please, I don't want any unicorns. That's too much copying. Mermaid, troll, dragon, gnome, etc. Now, if you can think of some dialogue now, write it down. And that if you can think, I want my character to say, hurry up, we're nearly there, or something like that, then you can do that now. Next, you need to think about your setting. There needs to be a paragraph describing where your characters are. Now remember, you do not have to include every sense. We say this every English lesson. But you need to think about the smells, sounds, sights, tastes, and any touch sensations. I always think 3 senses is more than enough for a good description. So write number 2, do those, press pause while you do that. Now, next up, the creature. You don't need to write full sentences here. This is not the story, this is the plan. But if I was writing about the unicorn, the killicorn, blood red eyes, skin the colour of midnight, huge dagger-like horn dripping with blood, powerful, strong, vicious, aggressive. So you're going to write down some things that are going to help you when you describe your creature. And then lastly, number 4, how do your characters escape the creature? Fred threw his sister over the stream, and then he stood there. He made it angry by shouting, "Come and get me." But then last minute, he pulled himself up onto a branch so that the creature couldn't stop running because its momentum was built up and went straight into the stream. So the dialogue there, what do they shout something or like, "Save yourself, don't look back, watch where you're going," or "Come and get me"? Can you think of your dialogue? And then how does it end? Are you going to end with dialogue or description? So he stayed in awe, he stayed in shock, or the siblings hugged one another and set off going home. So think about that. You have now got time to sit there and to come up with your key ideas. The key ingredients are characters, creature, location. What does it try and do? Does it try and chase them, eat them, kill them? And then how do they escape? That's your plan of your story. Do not write full sentences. I can't wait to see your plans when you send them to me so that we can start writing our stories next lesson. So bye for now, everyone.